Welcome to the Strong, Single and Human podcast. A real look at single parenting, how to navigate the ups and downs of life with kids on your own while keeping sane. We cover all manner of subjects from domestic violence, dealing with childhood trauma, through to fussy eaters and how to help your kids become resilient. I'm your host, Claire Martin. Welcome. This week's guest has appeared on the podcast before. AJ Coleman is the author of Keeping Those Feet Moving, a widower's 8-step guide to coping with grief and thriving against the odds. Throughout AJ's life, he has had to overcome tremendous challenges. As a child, AJ was frequently bullied for his hearing impairment. Instead of letting social challenges define him, AJ strived to overcome them. In 2009, AJ faced the most painful challenge of all, losing his wife Cory to brain cancer, when their daughter was just 1 year old. AJ started the Keep Those Feet Moving blog in 2013 to share his advice, experiences and philosophical wisdom to the world. He was inspired to write by the encouragement of close friends and family members who were all astonished by how AJ was able to stay strong after losing Cory. Today, AJ lives in the suburbs of Chicago. He is remarried with a blended family and focuses his time on raising his family and helping others overcome challenges. AJ is an avid Florida Gator fan who enjoys traveling, learning languages, playing soccer. When he isn't writing, he's always looking for opportunities to self-educate. AJ's story is truly an inspiration for all of us to keep those feet moving, no matter how difficult it may seem at the time. And he is back to join us today to talk to us about how he started dating after losing his wife. This is the Strong, Single and Human podcast. Hi, AJ. Welcome back to the podcast.
Great. Thanks to be here. How's you doing?
I'm good. Can't wait for today because, as people may know, AJ, we had AJ on previously, but I asked if AJ would come back on to talk about dating because you're a bloke and there may be other people out there who are now starting off on their single man journey, their single bloke journey, and who are thinking about going down the dating avenue. And you've been there. You're no longer available. But yeah, so hey, so first of all, just in case anyone hasn't heard our previous interview, and if so, why not? But tell us briefly how you became a single dad, really.
Well, it began, I had lost my wife due to an ugly battle with cancer. Our daughter was about 16 months old, and I really didn't know what to expect being a single dad. There's a lot of things that I had more questions on trying to grieve, trying to figure out the loss of companionship, but also the loss of my best friend, and trying to figure out how to raise a little girl. But I was a widower for many years. I've gone through a lot of different dating, what I call mishaps, because they are really, some of them are mishaps based on how dating has changed since the last time I was involved. So great stories to share with you. Sometimes we'll laugh about it, we'll scratch our head, and it is a wonderful experience. I will tell you that you really learn a lot about who you are and the person that you are interested in as to whether or not they are the right material.
But if I'm correct in stating this, you weren't really that bothered about dating, were you? It was your daughter that said, "Hey, Dad, come on, get out there."
Yes, I never wanted to date again. And I just had this struggle internally when my wife passed away. We never talked about the unknown. We never talked about the what-if scenarios if one person were to leave, the other one go ahead and date. And I never got that confirmation. So I really struggled with that dating aspect, let alone marriage. And one day my daughter was about 9 years old and she said, Daddy, can we talk? And I'm thinking, okay, well, let's talk.
Oh, here we go.
And I'm thinking she's going to tell me this wonderful story about something that happened at school or something. She's like, Dad, I need a mom. There is no way you're going to take me shopping for girl things that I don't want daddies to know about. And I looked at her and I'm like, seriously? This is the big talk we're having? You're 9 years old. Who put you up to this? But she had a valid reason. She was getting sort of lonely. A lot of her friend moms would go do their nails. They go to different events where mom and daughters were, and she was missing out on that. And when dad shows up, it totally changes the dynamic, because what do I know about nails? What do I know about some of these things? And she really felt left out, and she really wanted somebody to call mom. And she calls my wife mommy. So that's how we can kind of differentiate the two.
Yeah.
And as I shared in the last podcast, there's a lot of terminology I use a little bit different with my daughter to help her explain and understand how we have a little bit of a different dynamic than the most people do.
Yeah.
But I'm very transparent.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. So crikey, you have the talk. And I've got to say, like, you don't expect to have that sort of talk with your child. I mean, I must admit, my son is very much like, no, it's me and you forever, Mum. And I don't want anyone else in my world, right? Maybe it's boys, right? And maybe they're a bit different. I don't know. But then, okay, so you have the talk. How did you start? Where did you start? Like, because it's like you said, right? Dating's changed. And like, God, dating for me, wow. I've been through several relationships. I wasn't in a relationship. My relationship tend to last 10 years. And then, I don't know, I get bored, kick them out, do whatever. I don't know. But so it sort of works that way. But like dating when I was younger was like, go to a bar, go out. You normally met somebody through work or through your friends, because you were out with your friends and you met. So how did you get started? What did you do? Did you go out to bars on your own? Go trolling?
No, it was interesting. So at the time when I wasn't really dating or anything like that, I was meeting people just on the playground with my daughter, where a lot of women would come up and say, oh, our kids are playing, let's kind of have a conversation. And it really didn't lead into anything. But there was this one time this lady said, our daughters are having such a great time. What if we exchange phone numbers and we can have a play date? And I'm like, fantastic. I gave her my number. A couple of days later, she texts me and says, what are you doing Saturday night? And I looked at my schedule and I said, no, my daughter Zoe and I are free. What do you have in mind? And she sends me the text back and says, well, maybe the first time, maybe we leave the kids at home. And I didn't understand that at first because I hadn't dated in so long. So I called her and she's like, what are you calling me for? I said, I'm trying to understand your text. What do you mean leave the kids at home? It wasn't registering what she was getting at. And she's like, why don't you just text me back? Are you available? Are you not? We can have a play date. And that's when I realized she was using the kids as an opportunity to sort of
dating tool.
And I said to her, I'm really sorry. The last time I dated was way before cell phones and the ability to text message. So I was all new at this. And we did not go out. I actually did delete the number. I mean, that's just not somebody I wanted to be involved with. And, but as time went by, I talked to different people. I had started becoming very close with a childhood friend of mine who I confided with in a lot of different things. When it came to raising a little girl, I would turn to her attention. She was a single mom with twin girls and really understood where I was coming from.
Yeah.
And one thing started leading to another. We started dating a little bit, but it was more of an off and on. And again, I really struggled with moving on from my wife and not having that permission. So we must have broken up 2 or 3 times. And
Wow.
it was tough. A lot of it was me, of my fear of commitment.
Yeah. Well, and I suppose the guilt, right? The guilt of being unfaithful to your wife who had passed away, right?
It totally, even though I knew it wasn't, it totally felt like that. It just was unsettling, and I just could not get past that. And I did talk to somebody for a period of time just to see, am I crazy? Is it just normal? And they assured me it was. I was 33 years old when my wife had passed. So I was considered a very young widower, raising a little girl. And I had some obstacles. And I will tell you, in one of the times that I had broken up with my girlfriend at the time, I was going through what I call a yes phase, where I was just say yes to everything and anything. I just was at that point where I just wanted to try something different and do the reverse of everything I ever known. And it was almost like that movie with Jim Carrey, Yes Man, where he just said yes to everything. Well, lo and behold, one day my daughter was swimming with her swim instructor, and the swim instructor says, "Hey, I'm getting divorced. I need a place to live. Do you mind if I come crash at your house for?" So I'm like, "Sure, yes, go ahead, come on in." And then it gets to the point where the next day she calls me and goes, "Well, I have a cat. Now I'm allergic to cats, but I'm in my yes phase." I'm like, "Sure, bring over the cat." 2 days later, she texts me and says, "I got 2 more cats that need saving. Do you mind if they come over to your house?"
Oh my God,
So
and you're allergic to them?
I'm allergic to cats. So I had 3 cats in my house that were confined to a room. And I was saying yes to everything. And I had said yes at the time that my girlfriend at the time, we were broken up. So I was just saying yes to everything, and any request that people would come. And I met some very strange people when it comes to dating. And what I've come to the conclusion is none of us know what the heck we want.
Wow.
We get in a point in life where we want certain things, and when we're getting to that point, we suddenly pull back and say, "I'm not sure I want to go through this." And then you start dabbling in another space, and you start dabbling in that area, and then you start trying to put it all together. And then one day, it just came to me that I needed somebody I can trust. I needed somebody that my daughter was really fond of.
Yeah.
And I actually called up my ex-girlfriend, and said she understood everything that I had gone through. She was with me every step of the way. And I said, "Hey, let's go for dinner. I want to talk to you about some things." And she was hesitant. And it was really the first time I had to initiate the dating part to her and say, "Hey, let's try this again. I'm a changed person. I'm ready for that next step. I'm ready for that commitment. My daughter Zoe is ready. She wants a mom. She needs somebody in her life that she can look up to." And it took some convincing and some things, but we ended up getting married a couple, about a year or 2 later, and it was great. To a certain date, I still struggle with the whole dating notion, because it's so hard today. You have so many different apps. You have so many different people.
Well, did you go on the apps?
I did not go on any of the apps, actually. It was interesting. It was interesting. As a young widower, I found myself, people trying to just set me up. "Oh, I have a great girl for you. You would love to meet this person." And I would go casually into it and say, "Okay, let's get together." And then we have like nothing in common. And it's funny how people think that when you get set up, that you're supposed to be compatible. And sometimes that's not the case. And I felt worse telling the people setting us up, yeah, I'm not going to go out on a second term.
Wow.
It just didn't have that spark. But dating itself with those apps, it's sometimes you don't know who those other people are, but there are some very genuine people that have turned to apps. In fact, I met my first wife on a dating website because I had gone on so many horrible dates prior. And one time I just, after the one date that was so bad, made a profile with a buddy of mine and we just posted it online and it worked. But it's a different challenge when you're dating as a widower versus somebody who had gotten divorced. And
do you think so? Well, I suppose so. And also, right, you have your daughter 24/7, don't you? Really? Because you don't have the 50-50, like, you know, with divorce and separation, right? There's no, I mean, I don't have that either, I have to say, and my ex-partner is still alive. But it's a challenge, right? Because then you've got to date while fitting in like babysitters. And I mean, how did you take time out for date night, for want of a better word, right? How did you deal with that?
Sometimes it worked out where my daughter went to her maternal grandparents for a sleepover. So that enabled me to kind of go out and have a date night and just try to let loose a little bit and kind of have fun without the added pressure of like getting that phone call where, you know, I have to rush back home for a babysitter. I mean, there are some times I had to pay for a babysitter or something like that. But, you know, when you're dating as a widower, you know, the hardest part, I think, that people have that preconceived notion that you're moving on with your life and that you're going to forget about your loved one. And that's not necessarily accurate. It's more that we're searching for a companion to complement our life. We're not looking to replace. We still very much love our spouse, but we have a void, a physical void, a need. And dating sometimes fulfills that. We're looking for a companion, somebody we can just, in some cases, have adult conversation with without, you know, kids around and worried about who's spilling milk on somebody else's head and then interrupting the conversation and, you know, putting that out. And I think there's a second component is that when we're a widower, you tend to take your time, but there is no blueprint when it comes to dating. Some people feel that they need that companionship right away, and they're still mourning, but part of the grieving process is being in a companionship, finding somebody that they could just talk to. And sometimes people are very quick to judge and say, well, you know, your spouse has only been gone a year. You should be mourning. You shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
And
did you get anyone be judgy with you? Because it was some time, but even so, did you get people sort of judging what you were doing?
I don't know if I got people that really judged me too much. I think people were sort of just interested in what I was going to do. Yeah. And other things that I think people were looking at is they knew what my goals were. They knew I was dedicated and I loved my wife. And they were sort of surprised, I think, that I was okay to move on, right? Yeah. And I think those who know me know that I'm a very loyal person and I'm dedicated. I think the hardest thing I had to do was tell my wife's parents that I have decided to start dating. And I told them right away, right? And let them know so they would hear it from me, not from somebody else. And it was an awkward conversation, but I think they appreciated it. And
well, I would have never thought about having that conversation, right? But I suppose, like, this is the thing, right? When you are a widower and you're obviously still connected with your wife's parents, right? Because your child is their granddaughter, and therefore, and I suppose, yeah, you would go and let them know, because it's not like having an ex-partner.
Yeah, I just thought it was the right thing to do. And after all that they've been through, and that they lost a child, and their granddaughter may be exposed to maybe some different family values than what they're used to. And it was tough. It was really tough to tell them. They took it very well. They were supportive. And, I think everybody was swimming in the same direction, just sort of handling the waves differently.
Yeah.
And I think till this day, I still maintain that I did the right thing by opening up, sharing with them that I'm not moving on from their daughter. I'm just moving on to complement our lives with companionship, with memories, and do things, and assured them that their daughter is still very much a part of our lives every day. And she's still is. I mean, I would tell you a funny story. Like today, it's a special day for me. And my daughter and I had dinner together tonight. And we ordered from our favorite pizza place. And just the two of us. And I sat her down and I said, today is. And she looks at me and rolls her eyes and says, well, Monday? Before Halloween? And I said, yeah, but it was 20 years ago at this day, this time, that Mommy and I were on our first date.
Wow.
And I said to her, I knew I was going to marry Mommy as soon as I met her. And Mommy wasn't sure about me. And Mommy wasn't sure about me. She wasn't quite sure if I was the right guy or not. But I knew just she was the right. She had that glow about her. We had complete compatibility. So it was kind of bittersweet to spend like dinner tonight with my daughter, thinking about 20 years prior and thinking about how far we've come in that time. And, we talked a little about like what it's like, how I've moved on with another, woman.
Your wife.
And my wife, and how much of a struggle it was. And, she's 15, so, I mean, she just nods along. I think she gets me, but at the same time, she's like, this is a little awkward, Dad. You remember me saying about something 20 years ago. I'm just here to eat my food.
Oh, shame. She's funny. But that's teenagers for you as well. That's teenagers. Did you, because the lady you married, right? She was a friend. She's a friend of yours, or was a friend of yours previously. So did she know your wife as well, or she hadn't? So this is a friend from school?
Yeah. So it's funny. So my current wife, we grew up 3 houses down from each other.
Wow.
And we lived in a particular area. And we've always stayed in touch, even though our families moved elsewhere. And we were in each other's lives throughout time. Like sometimes we just sync up on a vacation unexpectedly. My grad school out in Arizona, she had gone to school there as undergrad. So we sort of interchange, and then we see each other at weddings, and we had mutual. So we were in on each other's lives, and she had gone through a divorce herself, and as a single mom raising twin girls, and really understood what I was going through raising a little girl. I mean, there were some things that I just did not understand about, a temper tantrum from a female's perspective, like what I can do for a little girl. And, maybe she just needed this comforting. Maybe she needed that. So it's hard when you're a single parent, you're playing both roles of mom and dad. And there's a deficiency in there because it's like, I don't know what it's like. And that's why I have such a huge appreciation for moms, because their role, it's just the nurturing, the constant worry. Dads were like, "Oh, the kid will figure it out. We'll put some dirt on his wound and it'll heal on its own," right? But the moms, they come in with the whole first aid kit, and the kid's all bandaged up by the end of the treatment session. But I think, talking with my wife, it really helped understand that I'm not alone. That I don't have to be alone, that there are people who are genuine out there that really care and understand, but it takes a special person. Because people always feel like they're in competition with somebody else. And that's not the case. And I think you have to establish sort of that ground rules early on in the dating, and just let them be aware that, hey, you're not in competition. I have feelings for you. We're going about this way, but there are times where I've called my second wife the wrong name, because sometimes I'm not thinking, because it's just, here we are.
Yeah,
right?
Well, no, that's right. Yeah.
It happens, but it takes a special person to sort of laugh it off. And then there will be times where I'll be reminiscing about the past. I'm like, "Oh, remember this restaurant? We had this unbelievable meal, this." And she'll turn to me and say, "Nope, first wife." I'm like, "Huh? No, I swear we went to this place together, you and I." "No, first wife." And I'm like looking back and looking around, and I'm like, "Oh, my bad." And she goes, "No, I understand." And then I have to find some way to kind of smooth the landing a little bit with a joke. But there are times I do get confused on where I was at a certain point in time with which person. So it does become, in my opinion, a little humorous sometimes in the dating, because it's exciting, it's scary, it's challenging, it's like a puzzle, trying to put all the pieces together and trying to figure out who works. But when you're a single parent, your children have to know that they're the most important to you.
I agree.
And vice versa. And if you're dating someone who doesn't understand, is going to be competitive with the children, that's, my opinion, may not be the right fit.
No, I completely agree. Like, at the end of the day, I think I've known people who are single parents who haven't told anyone that they've got children, right? And you go, why? Like, to me, my son is number one, right? And we have to consider his feelings and his thoughts. The same as, like, if you meet somebody who's got kids themselves, right? So it's not about, we need to sort out, like, it's about their kids come first too, right? So, does your wife, I don't want to call her current wife because it sounds like you're going to get another one after her, but does your wife, she has kids too? Did she have kids previously?
Yeah, she had twin girls.
Okay. Sorry, you had said.
Yeah, so, again, you're trying to blend everybody together, right? There's always some sort of competition. They're fighting for their time, their energy of their mother, while the mother's trying to find a balance between her children, me, my daughter, Terry. So blended families are definitely take a lot of work and take a challenge to do it. It's not definitely for everybody, but I really think that you have to have everything kind of buttoned up before you go into any sort of long relationship. And I think as we get older, we start looking more about the companionship and not always about the marriage, because sometimes people can have a better relationship as a companion than a marriage. And it depends on what everybody's goals are. It depends on how you cope and what your ambitions. But I think at the end, being married is a wonderful feeling. It's having somebody to grow with, to talk to, but it does take a lot of work, and it takes a lot of work trying to find the right one.
Well, did you have any dates where you were like, I've got to set boundaries with this person, and like, how did you do that with that? Because especially regarding your daughter, right? Because it's like, I can imagine, right? Like, they go on a date with you. They go, wow, this is like, he's a cool dude. This is all good. And they're wanting to move in within like 3 months and like, you know, play happy families and stuff. I mean, how did you deal with those situations? Did you have any of those situations?
Yes, I had a few when my girlfriend, before my wife, when we had broken up a few times, and I had kind of gone out, more like I called it hanging out, they called it dates, and there were a few ladies that got pretty attached quickly, right? And
Wow.
they would overcompensate a little bit for my daughter, like show. It's almost like, I don't want to call it like fake energy with her, but it just felt unnatural. The way they would talk to her, the way they would, try to like supersede into the relationship, and tell me about your dad. Well, my daughter's 5 years old. She's like, at the time, just like, he's my dad. What do you want to know? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, what is he like? What is he? I don't know.
She's 5.
Yeah, she's 5 years old, and I see this from a distance. And sometimes, again, it's like when I'm out and about, and again, and I'm still, when I'm doing this whole relationship, I'm still struggling within myself that it's okay to be in the presence of another lady. And I think it was challenging because some of those women were very aggressive. And what I found is that they were divorced and they were just looking to sort of replace what they've lost.
Wow.
Right? Their marriages didn't work out for many different reasons, whether they were bitter, whether they just realized they wanted two different things, but they were looking for like somebody to fill that void. And they wanted to move quickly, right? And then you start talking about, well, do you want kids? How many kids do you want? And I'm thinking, I've got a 5-year-old.
I've got one.
Like, I'm not even thinking about kids, let alone like, we're not even in a relationship and you're asking me questions. So I think when I was dating many, many years ago, coming out of school, I think questions that were appropriate and questions that were not appropriate to ask, back then, just completely changed today. Like everybody just goes all out on the first date and they want to know everything about you. They want to know where you've been. They want to know about your finances. They want to know about your ambitions with your children. Where do you want to live? Where do you see yourself in 50 years? And for somebody like myself, I go day by day. I'm fluid.
Well, you would do, especially after everything that's happened, right? With, your wife passing and stuff like that. You're like, well, I know that, you can plan for a future, but like, you might not get there, right? So, you just surviving with your daughter. Wow.
It was crazy. There was one lady that was very interested in what I would like to eat before I went to sleep at night. And at first, I thought she was kidding. She was like, do you like peanut butter? Do you like jelly? No, I don't like either. Well, what kind of sandwich do you like before you go to sleep? And I'm like, I don't like eating before I go to sleep.
No, neither do I.
And for some reason, she was just fixated on eating and bedtime at the same time. And it's just like, where do these people come from? And
so was that a red flag?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Like she wanted to eat in bed. Wanted to
feed me before I go to sleep. And I'm like, this is our first date. Like, we're talking about getting in bed on the first date, which I understand at times, right? It could be appropriate when you have relations and whatnot, but she was like mixing like this whole notion about what do you want to eat before bed? It's like, what, am I going to get a steak? Am I going to get a chicken or something and, have a third meal?
My God.
But you look back and there's a lot of humor, right? It's just like, really?
What? But do you think they want all of their questions answered on the first day? Because, and this is my little theory on it, because online dating, right? And I know you didn't go via the apps, right? But I've found that online dating is very much around, well, I've got 5 or 6 people sitting in the wings, right? So I need to know whether you and I are compatible, because if you're not, that's it. off you go, and I'm on at the next one, right? And I'm on at the next one because it's a numbers game. It's almost like people go, well, it's a numbers game because it's an app. And there's loads of people out there dating loads of other people, and it's a numbers game to get to the person that you want to date or feel as though you're compatible with, which hasn't happened with me, but like, yeah. Do you feel that was what they were doing?
I think a lot of time people just, it's like all about speed. It's about trying to move forward. And if you weren't meeting all those expectations, you're right. There'll be somebody else that they would just turn to. And that's where I think I learned the first time about the term ghosting.
Oh my God.
And again, I'm used to picking up the phone at the time, calling, hey, what are you doing this weekend? Would you like to go? Now it's all done by text message. I mean, who knows what people are doing, when they're doing things, and if they're even engaged, because they're chatting with so many people all at once. And it's just a different world. And the texting part, I get it. It's simple, but they want to know everything. And they're having 5 different conversations at once. And then all of a sudden you get, oh, oops, sorry, that question wasn't for you. It was for somebody else. And you're like, who in the heck are you talking to? I thought we were in conversation here, right?
Yeah.
And but it's definitely an eye-opening. And I think as we continue to evolve, people realize that life is short.
Yeah.
And we all have ambitions. And we all have goals in life that we want to achieve. And some of those goals involve companionship, but we don't want to wait 5 years for somebody. And there are people who say, well, you guys have been dating for 10 years. I thought, why don't you get married already? And people are like, I don't want to get married. I like how things are now.
Yeah, and that sounds like me. I'm like, I've done it once before in my 20s, and I'm like, nah, done it, been there, got the T-shirt. Do not ever want to do that again. Thanks. I like living in sin. It's all good. It's just the same thing. It's same. Just I haven't got to spend loads of money getting a piece of paper. So, hey ho. And nowadays, I mean, legally over here in Australia, if you're in a relationship for 2 years, legally, you might as well be married anyway, right? So, So you got to watch out and do those old prenups and all that stuff if you're a multimillionaire. But no, crazy.
It is, and it's interesting. I know people who have been divorced 2 or 3 times. I know people who've been widowed 2 or 3 times. Just the luck of the draw. There is no secret to dating. There's no secret to anything that we do. It's really on how our attitudes are, how we're perceived. And, I think a famous comedian, Jerry Seinfeld, hit it best. He said, what's the difference between a date and a job interview is that many, not many job interviews that you end up naked at the end of the night.
Yeah, well, hopefully, if it's gone well. Not the job interview, I mean the date.
Yeah, that's what he was referring to. And, and that was the difference, because all you're doing is you're just exchanging information left and right, And today, dating, I'm reading stories and about how men are going out and then not getting a second date and then sending a Venmo request for the lady. Oh, it's sort of like a Cash App, Zelle. It's sort of like a peer-to-peer payment system where people use this to exchange in the U.S. And basically what they're asking is their date to pay partial funds back because they didn't get a second date. And to me, it's just crazy, right? I'm old-fashioned. Whoever pays is the person who's asking the other one out, because that's what a date is. That's just how I feel. I know a lot of people say it's different today. They do split, maybe split the check. They do other things, whatever works. But for me, I've always used to, like, if I'm asking somebody out, I'm paying. But this whole new phenomenon, thank goodness I don't have to worry about it. But it's just like, whoa. And I think people look at that whole experience. It's just like game changer.
Yeah.
And that's why people start talking finances on the first date. They talk about past relationships on the first dates. And you do that, I mean, you better have a drink in your hand, because I can't imagine the amount of emotion that getting out there. You're not really supposed to be crying on your first date, and all of a sudden you've got somebody in front of you in tears because of the hurtfulness that they feel. And then what do? Do you comfort them? Do you not comfort them? It's like I mean, you can make a whole TV show just on dating today.
Well, and also, right, there's like rules, right? So like on a first date, right, it's like, I mean, I know my rules, right? But it's like on a first date where you go like, do you touch them on the arm? Do you like, are you physically, because also you've got, number one, you also have to be safe within this environment. I mean, I don't know if you heard of any, no, I sort of, I've spoken to you a couple of times, so I'm assuming this hasn't happened to you. But like, I mean, sure, there's dates out there where people go on dates and it's a first date and then they get accused of attacking the person or taking money or like, you know, and it can be a really nasty situation to be on, right? So you've got to you have your wits about you regarding being a gentleman, as it were, or being a lady, because it could be turned around the other way and then you could find yourself with a blooming lawsuit.
I've never had that. I do try to think holistically in any sort of relationship, any sort of predicament that I'm in. It's like, what would happen if I do this? With what actions would follow? And it would really come into play if I really had a great time on a date. I would certainly let the lady know that I was interested and I would love to see her again. If I didn't enjoy myself and I really didn't think there was a second date, I did my very best to word the end of the date, not to give any false hope. Oh, I'll call you sometime, or let's do this again.
Oh, so what would you say? Come on, AJ. How would you let these ladies down easily?
It wasn't easy. There's sometimes I think I might have fumbled it, but I would always kind of say, well, first, I'll be frank if it's okay, but if I knew it wasn't going anywhere, I would try to make sure there was no physical connection between us. Once I kind of reached out of respect, not only out of respect for the lady, but out of the situation itself. So you
your
don't
own
get
safety
into that
as well.
Right. And so I would always sort of, take care or something like that, something to the point where I wouldn't leave the individual thinking that there's a follow-up phone call, there will be a follow-up thing. And I think that's really important because you having to set those boundaries, because sometimes words can get somebody really, oh, I think he had a great time. He said he'll call me. And then they don't call.
Yeah. I mean, I must admit, I mean, I haven't been on many dates, but like I would say if I had to bring somebody, like if I wasn't interested, like I would always sort of say, look, it's been a pleasure getting to know you, but I don't feel a connection, so I'm going to move away and get on with other things, which didn't really end up really well. But, it's something on those lines, depending on, because most people you meet are like they're people, right? They're human beings. They're nice people. You just don't connect with them. But ghosting
honesty
somebody
is the key. You have to be honest with yourself. You have to be honest with the other person, because the emotions, the feelings, and how many times have we been on the other side of the coin, right? Where we have interest in somebody that doesn't have the same interest back. How do we feel? How do we go about that uneasy feeling where we're sort of down on ourselves? And all it could mean is just that we have a false sense there's hope, because that's what we hinge the word. Now, how many times do we go and replay the conversation at the end of the date with our family and friends and say, okay, now what did they say exactly to you as they were saying goodbye, right? And you start like putting all that emphasis on. If you like puzzles, that's what dating is. That is the best way I can describe, because there are pieces all over the place. You're trying to figure out how they fit in. Sometimes you're forcing the piece to fit in and it just really doesn't. And then later on, you regret that you forced that piece in there and the relationship doesn't work.
No.
And then you bring in the elements of the children, and now the children have to like the person you're dating. And that becomes a whole nother.
And if that person's got children, right, then you have to make sure that all the kids get together and they're not going to all kill each other and stuff like that. And like, you know, and that adds a different dynamic. When children are involved, it adds a completely different dynamic, right? Because if the kids aren't getting on, then, oh my God, blended family and co-parenting just is a nightmare, Going back to ghosting though, is there any time that you think ghosting is a good, like when you could justify ghosting somebody?
Well, I'd rather let somebody know that it's not working out, even if it feels hurtful. When you say, I had a really nice time, but I just don't see this going. I think that's about dating. A lot of times about closure. It's just knowing where you stand. That's why you always have that conversation. So we've been on like 4 dates. Where do we stand? What do we call each other? What do we want to do from here, right? But it's about closure. So I think from a ghosting standpoint, it's tough because if somebody is what I start saying harassing another individual with repeated phone calls, knowing that there's nothing there in terms of an opportunity to move forward in the relationship, the dating, then I think the ghosting might it becomes a safety thing, right? Like just don't respond. You don't want to say anything.
Block.
You don't
it depends, right? It depends on that harassment and that treatment, right? It starts getting abusive. And you start getting scared and worried. Well, then, you can just sort of sign it off and say, right, thank you very much, but I'm not interested and I'm not going to block you, right? So at least that way, that person then knows, I'm going to block you now. I really, I'm not interested. And you can still communicate in a nice way. But I've got a nagging question for you. AJ. Did you have a checklist when you went out there, when your wonderful daughter said, I want a mum, did you go out with a checklist, like a tick box thing?
There were things that I was looking for that would have similar qualities to my first wife.
Okay.
Whether, the genuine, the humor, the sincerity, that kind of stuff. Do they have similar interests? The second go around was a little harder because now I'm trying to figure out somebody for my daughter as well. So someone can marry us both, right? And is somebody really going to be genuine with my daughter? How do they interact? But as a widower, I really needed to find companionship with somebody who would understand that I would have good days and challenging days depending on certain things with my first wife, where I missed her at certain times on an anniversary or her birthday, that would just look at and say, I'm not in competition with his first wife. I'm staying in what I do best. I'm going to be supportive. And that was really, I would say, the biggest number one thing that I looked for in a mate was more like, do they understand what I'm going through? I don't ask them to like fully understand, but know that if I'm call them the wrong name for a second, it's not personal. It's if I do something that they would, and it just so happened when you're with somebody for so long and the marriage dissolves on a passing, it's just still that grief part. And
I'm glad I've got one child, right? Because if I had half a dozen, I'd go through all of the names of all of the children to just call them one name. I mean, my mum and dad do it with the grandchildren, right? They go, and they go through all of the names till they get to my son's name sometimes. We're just being human beings.
It is. But having somebody that understands and respects that what I had gone through, that it's not a personal thing, it's not a competitive part, is somebody that can just complement the relationship with my daughter and I. That was probably the number one thing. Number two, no marriage is perfect, right? No dating. There
No
are things that you're
relationship
going
is
to
perfect.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's things that you're going to agree, things you're not going to agree. And that's why I think the general rule is like, you focus on the 80% of the things that you both, and then the 20% you just sort of let go and not
Yeah.
really focused on that. As we get older, I mean, we're more in our own ways. We're stubborn. We want certain things when we want it, how we want it, where we want it, and why we want it. And some people just aren't on the same wavelength. That's why they
No.
unfortunately go on to a second, third, fourth, fifth marriage. And
Yeah.
because they're looking for that companion. But checklists, I think you just have to do what you feel is happy.
Yeah.
What makes you happy, what you want to do. You never settle. If you're settling for yourself, you're settling for your child, it's not going to work. It's not fair. It's not fair to anybody. You have to be in it with 2 feet. And in my situation, I had to talk to somebody to let go of that guilt and say that my first wife would have wanted me to move on. It's as much as I would want her to, but because we never heard it or talked about it with each other and got that permission, it does feel like you're cheating and having an affair. But it's not. Checklist, it can be anything you want it to be.
Yeah.
There are certain things that are important, and again, it's like the pieces. Make sure they all fit together to construct a masterpiece, and then when you're done with the masterpiece, you can frame it. And
that's true. That's true. And somebody liked blended families to me the other day, as I'm trying to think, it's that Japanese art where you get a broken vase and then you pull it back together again with gold. And I can't think what it's actually called now. But yeah, that's sort of what are you doing? In your case, not so much a broken family, but broken in the fact that you're missing a mom, right? And your partner passed away. But in other situations, it's because relationships have broken down as such. And pulling those families back together and using gold to actually sort of make that vase back one as whole as such. So no, I was just interested to see whether or not you had a checklist. It's sitting in my little head and I was going, I wonder if you had a checklist, because I know I did. But that's all good. That's cool. So look, thank you for coming on here. As you're obviously in a marriage, right? So, but telling us about your journey as a single dad, going out there and dating, and as a widower going out, because that's different, right, as well. Like as a widower going out there and dating and stuff like that. So thanks for coming on board and being absolutely honest with us and telling us a few stories and stuff. Look, just a final question for you. Like, is there a piece of advice that you could give somebody that you that potentially maybe somebody even gave you, right? Or that's going on this dating journey? Is there a piece of advice that you could give someone?
The best advice that I can give anybody is we have an opportunity every day to live life to the fullest. And it's almost a gift that has been given to us. And we can do anything we want with that gift. Go all in.
Yeah.
Go all in. Do what makes you happy. Don't worry about what others may think, what others may say. It's not for them to judge. It's not for them to dictate your life. This is your life, because one day you're going to look back and you're going to be glad that you took that opportunity to go all in. So whatever hesitation you have, take a step forward. Keep those feet moving, because you'll be surprised just how much better your life will be.
Yeah, and that's quite good, because you wrote a book about that. Keep those feet moving, right? Which is what we talk about on like the other episode, is about like how you kept going through everything that you were dealing with. So there is a book out there as well, people. More around you losing your wife and all of that sort of situation. It doesn't go As it does it go into dating? I didn't think it went into the dating
does.
side of it. Oh, it does. Okay. Well, maybe I should be getting
Oh,
this
yeah.
book and reading about the
Yes.
stories. But yeah, so yeah, it's just about keeping going. Look, AJ, thank you so much for coming
Thank
on the
you for having
podcast
me.
again. No, it's
Always-
a pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's a
Always
pleasure.
good to see you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And hey, if I'm ever over there in the States, I'll give you a phone and we'll get the kids together and
Yeah.
I can meet your wonderful wife and the twins and your
Yeah.
daughter. And yeah, we can go and do something like that. That'd be cool. Cool.
Looking forward to that. Let's
All
set
right,
it up.
awesome.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
All right. See you
Great.
later, AJ.
Goodbye. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you would like to hear more, please hit subscribe wherever you like to hear podcasts. If you would like to support us further, share this episode with your friends and family. And finally, drop us a review on iTunes, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and ideas. It all helps me to understand and produce awesome content you want to hear just like this. If you want to check out our past episodes, write to us, appear on the podcast, or for links, resources, and show notes, go to our website, www.strongsingleandhuman.com. We are also on all the usual social media platforms, Insta, Facey, and Twitter. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Be kind to yourself, and remember, no one is perfect. We're all just putting one foot in front of the other and doing our best. I'm Claire Martin, and you've been listening to the Strong, Single and Human podcast.